寝台回帰臨界。行けるところまで行ってみる？宇宙の終わり、その先へ。天も地も私のもの。女神でビーストとか最高でしょ。
Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Take FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. I'm afraid it's been
9 years.
But that means that another anniversary season is here, so it's time for an amazing celebration. A beast-class servant of utmost anticipation, Space Ereshkigal, who is also Summer Ereshkigal. So, if this is your first time watching Unwanted, we're going to talk about a servant's history, lore, mechanics, and more. And I'll run that down in a little more detail later. Also unscripted. Want to apologize if I sound slightly off at all. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so if I'm a little, short of breath or low energy at points, my bad. But, we gotta work with the times. But without any further ado, let's go. Alrighty, so, we do already have a Wanted on Eresh, but since that's decently old, I'll give you a refresher, despite her being a summer servant, so we usually are lighter on history. Ereshkigal, meaning Queen of the Great Earth, is the ancient Sumerian goddess who rules the underworld, which is known as Kur, or Urkala, or several other names. She can also sometimes be called Urkala after her kingdom, much like how the Greek Hades can mean the god or his place, or Ninkigal, Lady of the Great Earth, and several other less common names. Her main temple was believed to be in Kutha, modern Tel Ibrahim, Iraq, which was originally the cult seat of Nergal, though evidence is that her cult had very limited scope. Ereshkigal is associated with two primary myths, which I shall relate in brief. The first, and probably most relevant to us, is Inanna's descent into the underworld, a poem about the titular events. Inanna, aka Ishtar, Astarte, etc., who is described in that poem as Ereshkigal's younger sister, is attempting to extend her influence to the underworld and seeks entry. Ereshkigal has her strip an item at each of the 7 gates of the underworld until Inanna is powerless, then she is sentenced to death by the underworld judges. But Inanna's aide, Ninshubur, pleads with the gods, so Enki sends some beings down to retrieve Inanna. Everybody escapes, but they're pursued by a horde of demons who demand somebody in exchange. At the end, finding her husband Dumzuid has not mourned her death, Inanna has them take him away, so now he's stuck in the underworld part of the year. The other major myth is Ereshkigal's marriage to Nergal, god of inflicted death, so war, disease, and other causes of death. There's a couple variations on this, depending on how murder-happy or just happy everybody is, but basically there's a banquet of the gods where Eresh is invited. She doesn't attend, she sends her vizier instead. All gods are courteous to him except Nergal, and as a result, Ereshkigal demands Nergal be sent to her. Nergal is advised not to do any of the usual underworld things, eat, drink, sit, wash, etc., but forgets the most important advice, not to do the hanky-panky with Ereshkigal, and so is trapped for 6 days until he escapes. And Eresh demands he come back or she'll open the gates of the underworld. Depending on the version, Nergal either comes back and basically overturns Ereshkigal violently and she offers to split her power 50-50 with him, or they just go back to boinking and he still has to leave for 6 months of a year. So there's a couple of variations on what exactly the idea is. It's also relevant to some later factoids. It's a thing that Fate knows anyway, that Gugalana is the name used for Ereshkigal's first husband, who, in her descent to the underworld, Inanna claims she's attending the funeral of. Gugalana may be the same as the god Enungi, who is the god of irrigation and agriculture and also associated with the underworld, and could be the same as the Bull of Heaven from the Epic of Gilgamesh. They have the same or similar names, but it's not confirmed they're the same person. Depending on the mythology, Eresh is also considered the mother of Ninazu, an underworld and warrior god who's associated with snakes and agriculture, son of Gugalana. Hey, easy to do that one, which would make the god Ningishizde her grandson, and also she is associated with as the mother of Manungal or Nungal, who is the goddess of prisons. In some versions also of the legends, her vizier Namtar is also her son by Enlil, so stuff around. And Ereshkigal is associated with several other goddesses, such as the Hurrian Alani, the Hittites' sun goddess of the earth, no proper name listed that I could find easily online, and the Greeks used Ereshkigal as another name for Hecate. So, moving to lore. Space Ereshkigal is our Eresh equivalent to Space Ishtar, if you couldn't figure that out. If you want to know what's up with that, there's another video on this channel somewhere. She is also our swimsuit Ereshkigal we've been dutifully waiting for. Her own profile described her as a once-in-a-lifetime indulgence. Yay. However, unlike Space Ishtar, whose Ashtar Avenger stuff is mostly just influenced by Human Order, Space Ereshkigal here is kind of a merger of the Pan-Human History one and the Servantverse one. So her attitudes are similar to our basic Ereshkigal, but more space. And more summer. Summer space. In her initial ascension, she is just pleased as punch to finally get her own swimsuit and join the ranks of Summer. She pays no mind to her impending beast mode, if you will. She's just happy that she finally got her swimsuit. Eresh's profile also describes her as the Null Beast, or Beast Zero perhaps. Not sure how the localization is going to translate that one. And the Beast of the Universe. She has the Nega Space ability and is associated with infinity. However, her original goal of hindering human prosperity has been replaced by a master affection system. This is an actual mechanic I will explain later in the next section. Her second ascension is her going beast mode, a cool, distant beauty with none of her clumsy or awkward traits. Her Gap Moe has been replaced by a fearsome heroine. Powerful, powerful. And if you want to know what the deal is with her Ascension 3, you're gonna have to stay tuned. Her first version profile literally says it's unknown how we got here, but that's because, as a summer servant, she literally is a summer mode servant. Space Ereshkigal is due to appear in the upcoming summer event, which is like only a few weeks away, and then that is secretly, except not so secretly now thanks to Clairvoyance, a lead into Ordeal Call 3 Archetype Inception, where we'll get further appearances. Like, actually, you're going to get new profile data by clearing that one. Ereshkigal has previously appeared in FGO in Singularity 7 Babylonia, Merry Christmas from the Underworld, which was her playable banner debut, and Lost Belt 7, which earned her a Ninkigal, or Ninkigyaru, costume if you're not familiar with her. So if you want to keep track before the latest, well, you have to get through all those stories. Actually, no, I don't remember if Merry Christmas is a main interlude or not. I think it is. I think they put the Christmas stuff in there with Altera Santa. Anyway, let me know in the comments. But the Singularity 7 and Lost Belt 7, if you want to get to Ordeal Call 3, you got to go through there first. So, in the background, FGO's Eresh has specified that she didn't actually marry Nergal, making out with him unknown. But they did split each other's authority 50-50. But obviously, getting into exact details would be future spoilers, and instead, I have a lot of mechanics to talk about, so let's jump into that. Alrighty, so, the big one. Step 1. Space Ereshkigal is our second playable Beast class servant, and much like the Beast bosses in the story, her class advantage is completely different from the previous one, and all possible potential future ones. So, Space Ereshkigal, as the Null Beast, inflicts times 1.5 damage to, and takes 0.5 damage from, all the extra classes, that is, Ruler, Mooncancer, Alter Ego, Foreigner, Pretender, except Avenger, which she deals 50% damage to and takes double damage from. All other classes are X1. Pretty normal stuff. Also, kind of keeps the funny relationship Ishtar and Eresh have with class advantage. I'm just gonna blame that on the sick chest. Her attack and HP stats are kind of in the middle of the curve. They're neither too low nor too high. And her deck is 1 quick, 2 arts, 2 buster, with slightly above average hits and relatively low normal NP gain at 0.33. Don't worry about that. Don't concern yourself. She does have relatively high star weight and pretty average star gen stat by default also, since we can't use the class averages. Basically, at around 150-ish star absorb, that's high, but not the most. I think, is it like Riders that are like 200? So, like, it's high, but not maximal. And 10% star gen as an average is, I'm pretty sure, kind of in the middle. Definitely there are lower, but there are also higher. Now, we need to talk about the Master Affection system before we discuss her Noble Phantasm. So basically, when you use Space Ereshkigal, she has a special gauge which starts at 1 and goes to level 10. It has different titles like Mate, Buddy, Darling, Destiny, etc. Certain actions you take or events which occur in the battle will give her points. Every 10 points she gets, she goes up a level, and her NP is altered by the level you're at. So, here's a large list of the things which net you the Master Affection points. If you have Space Eresh at Bond 5+, that's plus 5 points automatically. If you put her in the front row, the first 3 team slots, that's another plus 5. If you deploy her on a waterside battlefield, that's a plus 10, which is a whole free level right there. Selecting any one of her command cards is worth plus 3. If she performs a Brave Chain with those command cards, that's also plus 6 at the end. If you use any one of her skills, skill use is plus 3. But if she is the first character you've used a skill on each turn, if she's the first one to activate a skill this turn, I should say, that's an additional plus 2. So your first skill you activate, if it is the very first skill activated on the turn, is a plus 5 total. If you use a Mystic Code skill on her, that's another plus 5. And if you use a command spell on Space Eresh, that's a full plus 10. That's another whole level there. Note that for purposes of the Master Points, using command spells on a Team Revive does not count, and using certain Mystic Code skills like Order Change doesn't count. I also think it probably counts for Story MC effect. Also, by the way, this is a complete aside that I've literally just realized reading the script as I wrote it. It's very funny that obviously, like, Mystic Code makes sense. That's correct to the Fate universe. But saying Mystic Code skills, abbreviated MC skills, makes it sound like you're saying main character skills. That's funny. Also, note that there are no NTR jokes to be had here. If you use a friend support Space Eresh, she has her Master Gauge set to 0 and cannot gain points on it. Perform romantic actions with your Space Eresh only. Now, with all that given and explained, let's talk about her NP. It is an AoE Arts, which by default deals bonus damage, plus 10% NP power, for each Master Affection level she has. It removes the enemy's offensive buffs, and has a chance to inflict instant kill at the end. The Overcharge effect increases her Master Affection points first, starts at plus 5 at 200%, and goes by plus 5 for each Overcharge level. Beyond that, for a maximum of plus 20, 2 whole levels at 500%. So this is obviously incentivizing you to get some extra NP copies, but also stack those plus 1 overcharges. Now, based on her Master Affection level, she will apply other effects as well. If you are at least 4+, 4 or higher, she increases her instant kill rate by 100%. This is basically a guaranteed instant kill effect against bronze enemies. And at 7+, she gets Pierce, Invul, and Ignore defense for 1 turn first. At 10, at maximum level, she generates 50 stars out of it automatically. So obviously this means that your sweet spot is a minimum 4+, and likely a 7-up for best effect, though obviously if you're just farming you don't need Pierce, Invul, and defense, but it can be helpful. And obviously the higher levels you're getting, the more damage you're getting out of her NP. 10x really is just sugar on top. That's going to be used in certain cases, which I will describe later when talking about how you're going to use her in a team comp. So, it'll take a little bit to get there, but Bond 5 and Front Row are a free level. Both those together is plus 10, so you're automatically at level 2 just by, using her and grinding her up. If you use a Waterside Field, that means another free plus 1. So hitting 4+ is pretty easy. Just tag her with a couple of Mystic Code skills for buff, fire all of her skills, at least one of which must be first in the order, and then grab as many of her command cards as you can. I believe that is, by the way, plus 3 for each of her valid command cards, so it doesn't apply if she's stunned, which won't happen anyway, but you know what I mean. If she's got, like, Arts sealed, you can't pick Arts cards. It doesn't work, but picking her NP card should count. And that should give you some stuff to start. If you want to jump straight to 7, you're going to need to do some work, but do remember that Affection lasts the whole battle, so if you keep using her commands cards and skills, and especially if you can get some overcharge in there by any means necessary, you can build up that 7 probably by the 3rd turn. I didn't write out my exact math, but I did a couple of different variations of calculations in my head when writing the script, so you should be able to do it. Comments? You're going to have to let me know if using skills to make the field water works for her plus 10, or it only works on initial deployment. Like, I assume she only gets the plus 5 for being in the front row in the first 3 slots when you start the battle and she is in that slot selected. So I don't know if, because the wiki phrases it as deploy her on a waterside battlefield. I don't know if using a servant to change it to water later would help. If you can do that, that is a pretty easy plus 10 with certain team comps, so keep that in mind when we talk about teams around Space Eresh. But I'm a little doubtful based on the phrasing. Like I said, you'll have to let me know. I can't test yet. We're shooting this days before maintenance. Anyway, how about those skills? So her first skill is her own version of Space Ishtar's Devil Sugar. It's a souped-up charisma, 10 to 20% attack up, and NP damage, which is NPD, but I said it too fast, for 3 turns to the whole party. It also is a 10 to 20% battery based on your skill level, and gives the party 50 to 100% instant death resistance for all 3 turns. but it does inflict 500 poison on the party for 3. So, there's a demerit, but you're still schmoovin'. A little 500 damage never hurt anybody, right? Stares at Black Grail. Second skill deposits 10 to 20 stars, but it's also a big star absorb buff for 1 turn, but is also a 30 to 50% battery for herself. That means you're looking at a 70% total if all skills are max. And grants her a 1 turn on attack buff, which increases her critical damage by 50 to 100% based on skill level for the turn on a normal attack. This procs first, keep in mind, so basically when she goes to execute the attack, if she's doing a normal attack, she will buff her critical damage. So, hypothetically, if you're doing like a Brave Chain and you're likely to crit, which, hypothetically you would be guaranteed if you are firing, NP at level 10, you can get like 300% of that last crit. Can be very nasty. And her final skill is the Great Tanker. She gets to its 3 turns Invul, 1 time 3 turns Guts for 2k to 3k, pretty normal Guts ability, a heal for 2k to 3k HP. It's a shame she doesn't take demerit damage from the poison right away. We could actually work with that and incentivize proccing this skill. She removes all of her own debuffs, get fucked nerd, and has a 1 time 3 turns of 50-100% buff removal resist increase, and also reduces her other skill cooldowns by 2. This is pretty good because I think she's sorry, I almost said it. I think she's either 676 or 787, something like that. I didn't jot it down in the list. But the -2 skill cooldown on her 3rd skill is pretty strong. I will say, some of these are situational, so obviously if you're farming, you can just dump all 3 of these on turn 1 to get all your, cool free buffs. But obviously if you need a little bit of strategic thinking, you may want to stagger these, which I think does make the +5 total you can get if you activate one of her skills and she's the first one, useful. If you fire all 3 on 1 turn, you're getting 11. Had to do some quick maths. I'm tired. But you can make 15 total if you spread it out over multiple turns. But it's really going to depend on what your setups are and what skills you need to activate. Now, for passives, she's got a lot of them. She has Anti-Magecraft EX for just 3 stacks of debuff immune every battle. She's just got 3 of them to start. You can see it right there on the screen. And instead of something like a self-replenishment, which Avengers might get, she just gets 5% NP on normal attack regardless of the card. I told you not to worry. Her NP gain stat actually doesn't matter. She is literally making 5% every time a normal attack connects. And she does have a Goddess Essence E- for a tiny little bit of damage buff and a little bit of debuff resist. She has 3 stacks of debuff immune, so she doesn't need normal debuff resist, but yeah, keep it in mind. She also has a permanent +20 crit on Servants, which can be pretty nasty, and then has Independent Manifestation like most beasts and beast accessories for just a teeny tiny bit of instant kill and mental debuff resist up, and a general crit up. It's only 1.5 all the time, so don't count on that. It just means that her crits are very slightly better. But more importantly, having this ability means that she's just straight up immune to stun, pig, petrify, and bind statuses. So she's not immune to charms, though she does have a little bit of debuff resist, but other stuns she will just be nah. I should also note that her Master Affection is represented by a passive skill, the Infinity Indicator, which we detailed above, and she also has Nega Space, which does nothing in her profile, but it's there. This does mean, however, that Space Eresh is tied with Summer Kama and Dioscuri for most passives, so we're going to include it for the spread. Now, role-wise, it's pretty obvious that Space Eresh is like Space Ishtar. She's a big AoE hitter for farming. Space Ishtar was a really top-tier meta unit for a long time, at least a couple of years, I want to say, which I guess in the terms of the 9-year history of FGO is not that long, but when she came out, everybody was like, oh my god, broken! Extra attack support, she can change her NP type. She still does do all that, honestly, thanks to the power of Castoria. The fact that she can change her NP type and get, extra attack buffs doesn't really matter. The fact that she's already an AoE Arts Avenger is fine. But you can slot her in different comps. Space Eresh, they don't try to do that gimmick again. They have realized that everybody is rolling for Castoria, so Arts is fine. And the beauty is, you don't actually need 2 Castorias to make this work, but we'll talk about that in a second. So, with Space Eresh's class advantage as a beast, this spread makes her well-suited for any weird node which has a lot of extra class units, except Avenger, and she can still make use of her X1 damage pretty normally. You get the extra bonus damage from Master Affection cranked on that NP, and you pour those buffs on. You're incentivized to hit her with Mystic Code buffs, so she'll be cranking the damage even at 1x. And I should note that she's not inherently selfish. She has a pretty big team buff in there. but she would prefer that you used her skills first and hit her with the Mystic Code buffs and command spells and used her command cards. So, like, it is a different definition of a selfish unit. It's just that she does also spread buffs to your squad. That said, doing all that's pretty easy to use her while she's a primary damage dealer. You know, you don't... Scotty's firing command cards, you know? That's one of those jokes you make. Not that you would use a Scotty with her, but supports have often taken a backseat in terms of dealing damage in 3-turn farming comps. But don't sleep on her. Also, don't sleep her. That's another stun she's not immune to. But anyway, don't sleep on her if you're trying to do story fights and challenge quests, though. She has crazy good defensive potential. Like I mentioned, her HP is not small, even if it's not the most maximum, and that third skill is really good at tanking. So the classic art stall strat will work great. You know, bolt her to like a Mash and a Jean, and you'll be living through some stuff. And this still works very strong because it'll keep grinding up her affection level to maximize it so you can do more damage later. It's really interesting how, you know, actually firing up those abilities works. Also, once again, do recall, Master Affection resets between fights, but stays at whatever level you increase it to during the fight, and only keeps going up. There are no actions in fight which can remove it, other than possibly KOing her, but I assume if you revive, she comes back with it. Anyway, this means for support, you're looking for the usual suspects. She is an arts unit, so we gotta talk about them. Now, Space Eresh has a 70% battery on her own and wants you to use it, so you're not forced to rock a double Castoria build, though obviously Castoria's NP gain up can really help looping. Like, the 50% battery off Charisma of, or with Charisma of Hope is not the important part. The important part is that you stick, those Avalon the Fae buffs on there for sick NP gain. But obviously, if you have multiple NP levels, the overcharge generation, overcapping your NP can be helpful as well. But you can also, as with a lot of the other latest art units, mix in several other supporters. I've noticed a trend that since Castoria has been tagged as the most popular support, one of the greatest Grail targets of all time, that Lasengel has just been making arts units not require double Castoria. Like, they have bigger batteries or alternative setups where it's just like, you can just work with other guys. It's okay. So your best bets in this combo are probably Tamamo, more NP damage, and if she can fire her NP, that's skill cooldown, which Eresh really likes, or Lady Avalon, who grants max HP up, crit damage up, and extra overcharge levels. So I would say Lady Avalon is slightly better than Tamamo in this setup, but again, don't sleep on your classic Tamamos. But Lady Avalon feels a little better made for that spicy crit damage on the overcharge. There are also a few other supporters or even secondary offensive units you can roll in. If you're, using mixed nodes and you want to save, Space Eresh for a big bomb against, an extra class guy, if you're fighting units that might be hit by it, Sakamoto Ryoma Lancer can increase the whole squad's overcharge by, 1 level, 3 turns, stuff like that. Edison, I believe, does something similar nowadays. There's lots of units going around where you can do these pulls. For craft essences, we have fun choices as well. Since she has 70% on her own and you're likely using some supports, you can go with 0 or lower than 50 starting batteries. Pick up something like Holy Night Dinner or Ocean Flyer. Both are base 30% if you're not MLB, which, works out with the 70. Or go, all the way with Black Grail for maximal damage. And again, that even Black Grail, I feel like, incentivizes you to use her heal skill. You actually take some damage. The Primo CE, though, I want to say for Space Eresh is probably the one who desires salvation. It's got Amakusa on it. This is just +2 overcharge 3 times, 4 times if it's MLB. That means you're rocking at least +10 Master Affection every time you fire NP. And again, since she's an arts unit with 70% battery maxed out on her own, you don't care that it's starting at 0, man. You're going to do some big damage in those second and third waves with that. There's also a few lesser overcharge boosters to consider, like Rising Mud Rain, which is the new Black Grail. It has a similar but weaker NP augment effect, but also gives you +1 overcharge 1 time. The Duke of Flames, the Lone Bearer, Treasure of the Caribbean, which just had a rerun. These are all one time, overcharge levels for +5. So it's solid. Keep that in mind. But also, don't sleep on Bond CE for Ereshkigal. It gives her a 30% NP damage up and 30% crit damage up versus Servants, making her passive total 50%, but also just instantly gives her +1 affection level. It makes the math a little bit easier, especially you basically replace needing to put her on a water side with it. I love when Servants have unique gimmick mechanics and they actually interact with their Bond CEs. And now to discuss other stuff. As an extra class, Space Eresh only needs mats to ascend, 10 each of a few things, which should be no problem, except she does need shells, which will be in demand because of summer, and also some of the new Flowers of the End, or End Lilies, if you will, which just came out, so enjoy that. That's an Audio Call 2 mat. The new skills, obviously, are mats only, but those also can be nasty. She's going to need 12 shells per skill, 15 obsidian knives, and ether photons, and also more of the Lilies of the End. All per skill. That's 45 total. So, be prepared. No, I'm not going to challenge the House of Mouse and put a Scar clip there. Just know that I could. Anyway, Space Eresh is also a relatively rare servant, just like Draco, though not the most rare. She will have a debut banner, now at 9th anniversary. She'll be included next year in the weekly extra and the Grand Duel Lancer extra campaigns. Those kind of overlapped a little with timing. And hasn't been back since, though knowing how crazy FGO goes on banners these days, who knows? The important thing to note is that unlike my other comments where I talk about limited units, as a beast, Eresh is not typically available in Lucky Bag GSSR pools. She's normally only available during GSSR time on the Destiny Order summon. So keep all of this in mind. Alright? And that's that. Happy 9 years, everybody. Probably like 8 years of Wanted, maybe. Make sure to give us a sub and follow the podcast, Let's Talk FGO. We're going to talk about all the new anniversary stuff, the new JP event, and more. It's going to be live, so tune in. Probably later today if it goes public. Good luck on your GSSR and Eresh rolls, everybody. And of course I say public, because in addition to the usual liking, commenting, and subscribing, and also joining our Discord, we have a community Discord that is moderated. We can score some cheap points there. But we also have a Patreon where at sufficient levels, you can get access to videos like Wanted early. So that's why I say for public. And we'll have a extra special word to our patrons in just a second after a musical outro. And before we go, special shout out to all of our patrons, but especially Adam DeHarp, Blackster G, Call Me Zed, Carlos, Dragon, JW8000, Rise of Kenji, Rogue Robin, and Sharvor. Thank you for all your support, everybody. Consider supporting us on Patreon if you want to see us do more.